So hi everyone, and welcome to the Stool podcast, a podcast for woodworkers and the maker community in general. This is episode number 3. My name is Robin Lewis from robinlewismakes.com. I'm joined by Joey Chalk from King Post Timberworks and Jordan Crawford from Periodic Furniture Studio. We live stream the recording every Thursday evening at 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time or UTC plus 10, or you can watch it or listen to it later on YouTube or SoundCloud. I want to say hello to everyone in the chat. We'll get your comments as much as possible as we go, and feel free to chat amongst yourselves. The idea being that this is also a place for people to meet once a week. So before we get into this week's episode, which is going to be a doozy, let's do a rundown of what everyone's working on. So Joey, do you want to hit us off?
Yes, what am I working on? Okay, so after all that talk last week about outdoor furniture and the fun and joy of it, I've managed to get myself a commission for this giant outdoor lounge suite. So I'm making 2 3-seater sofas, a single-seater, 2 planter boxes, and 2 coffee tables. And it's all out of 65mm Iroko, which I went and picked up this morning, started milling it up this afternoon.
Nice.
So yeah, that's I'm not actually sure how much I'm going to be able to get done before Christmas, but
Do you get the cushions and stuff made externally, or are you doing that yourself?
No, I've got a upholsterer 2 doors up, and so I've got them on to ordering the materials for that. They reckon they'll get me the cushions the day before Christmas, so these people will have at least somewhere to sit, hopefully, for Christmas Day. I am working on, you guys might have seen on my Instagram, I had some large pieces of totara, and I'm making a dining table out of it, or a tabletop. Client has a big steel table base.
I wondered what the base was going to be.
Yeah, but the timber is just moving all over the place. It's really terrible, and I'm really having trouble flattening it out. I got to the point where I called the client and said, we got to change what we're doing. You know, we need to put breadboard ends on this thing. We need to put some extra supports. And he's like, no, I just want a flat piece of wood. So I said, okay, we'll try and screw it down to your steel frame, and that should pull out some of the flat bowing issues. But who knows what's going to happen over time, as this thing is going to keep, it moved on me 10mm over the course of a day. So,
sure. Damn.
Yeah, I'm having trouble with that. So that's fun. I've got a couple of other deliveries to make this week, but yeah, that's about it.
Cool.
Yeah. Jordan, what have you been working on?
So this week's been a little bit, it's a continuation of last week. So the outdoor table, which I talked about last week, was finalized and delivered on Monday, which actually turned out really nice. I was surprised. It was quite a budget thing, so I was just using what I had, and I was really happy with it. And so was the client.
Can I just butt in there?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, how did you treat the miters? It wasn't until I saw the pictures of it.
I would ask that, yeah.
Did you epoxy them and domino them, or?
There is a video coming, but it's long floating tenons.
Yeah.
And it's epoxied, so it's
cool.
double up of that.
Yep.
But because of the way it's flats are actually what sits on the base, so it shouldn't. Oh well, fingers crossed.
Yep.
We'll find out.
Cool.
On top of that, it's been a real pig of a job. Something that the client just has taken me for a ride on, and it's a big countertop for a cafe. 3.6 meters long, and it was built for a steel frame. And when I get there this morning after an injury, we also need to cut a notch out of it for the plumbing. We need to also recess in for a glass washer, and I've quoted for a countertop, not install. So
you're just delivering.
I'm just so it's like, well, I've got a few tools. I cut the notch out, and then so I've got to go back tomorrow. Try and find someone that can come and help me, because I can't hold a router at the moment. I've got to cut this big recess. There's actually a through hole for a glass washer, and secure it, and then there's going to be go back again once it's finished installed to do trim because his base wasn't square. So it's a real pig of a job, and
sounds
I'm really
pretty standard for a shop fit out. So
yeah, it's just when you ask them what's involved,
yeah,
and they do it when you get there is a little bit annoying. But it's still at the end of the day, happy client, quick payment. So I'm not going to complain about the actual client, just not knowing what was in store.
Yeah.
Is that quite a common thing to sorry, I'm not sure if that's what you were meaning, Joey. Is that quite a common thing to happen with those type of fit outs?
In my experience, any commercial shop fit out, they a lot of the times they'll just tell you half of what needs to happen, or they'll tell you what you need to know to make your part of the job, say the cabinetry. And then when you get there, they'll be like, oh, and by the way, you're going to have to alter this wall, level up the floor, cut a hole through this, and somehow wangle it all together. And we're opening tomorrow morning, so get it done, guys.
No pressure.
I think it's a lot to do with they have a vision, but them not necessarily knowing how to achieve it. And they don't understand that it's not just a simple thing of cutting a hole. Like this is a square inset. The corners have to be perfect. And the only way to cut that after you've glued up a tabletop is to actually route it out and then square up the corners. It's just, they don't realize how much work goes into it.
And try not to chip the finish on the edge, on the corner and stuff.
Yeah. So now it's like, I don't know how to go about talking to them about it's going to cost extra, or if I just put it on the invoice, and if they question it, it's just
that's the whole topic there.
Exactly. That could be a good show, actually.
Extras. How do you charge for extras?
So anyway, that's where I got to. Everything else has been put on hold.
Yep.
For at least a few weeks until I'm back on the go. But what about you, Rob?
Cool. So I've had a couple of things on the go. You might be able to see behind me. That's a mobile cart for my thicknesser with a box for dust collection underneath it. So I got quite lucky.
I saw that on Instagram, and I was like, "How the hell are you going to get the chips? Like, have you put a suction fan in, or does your planer have a blower?"
So when I bought this planer, everything I read, so it doesn't have a blower that I'm aware of.
Right.
But everything that I read from people said that it doesn't spit the chips out fast enough. So it made sense. No blower doesn't do it. But every time I've used it, I've looked at this thing and thought, I mean, this it's aggressive with the way the chips come out of it. Maybe it does. Right. And it was only then when I bought that bit of hose and plugged it in, because I was trying something. I wanted to try and plug that hose into my little shop vac. It was only when I put that clear hose on that I saw how fast the stuff was coming out. And I was like, you know what, this must have.
Yeah.
Because it just blasts them out. Unfortunately, the shop vac can't keep up with it.
No, of course not.
Yeah, which I didn't know. But I didn't know that. So I bought this 100 mil down to 38 mil like cone.
No, it's not. No, the chips are pretty big on those.
Yeah.
So anyway, so on the top of that, the video should be out this weekend. On the top of that box is some furnace filter fabric.
Right.
And then it just blows it in, and the air, the positive pressure when it comes out of the top. And the only thing I'm struggling with is the box is made out of melamine, so it's a bit heavy.
But from rocking.
I guess the only thing I would say to be cautious of, I mean, it looks like a great setup for anything. Like, how wide does that machine cut? 280, is it? Something like that?
Yeah, 285, I think,
Yeah, so if you were to, say, put a 280 pine board especially, the straight knives on a planer take big wide ribbons off a piece of pine.
This is a spiral.
You got a spiral, have you?
A spiral in that little thing?
Well, no, sorry, it's not spiral. It's
segmented.
It's the it's not
a straight knife.
So it's the little knives.
Okay, well that's
good.
There you go. You're only going to get small chips.
Where did you find your furnace filters?
I got online.
Okay.
Tried to look for it at Bunnings, couldn't see anything.
I'm looking for them as well because I need to cut some holes and fill them. Online.
So this was a sort of my first foray into doing this type of thing, and it's functional. I don't think it's like like a finished product. I'll keep it. It works for now. But yeah, so because as I say, I don't have a shop vac. I don't know how proper dust collection is supposed to operate and all that. But it'll work.
I'll just say that when I started out and had similar style planer, the Zito had a large shop vac style vacuum, but it has a 100 mil hose. And I had one of them when I first got a planer, and that thing worked really well. I mean, obviously yours has got a good setup on it, but for other people, if they're looking for a cheap way,
I reckon if you were to not use the fixable hose with the ribs in it, and if you could find in some magical place clear like PVC pipe that's smooth core, but you can also see if it clogs up. Yeah. That would work even better because then the chips would just slide down into the box.
Yeah. It's just hard because it has to go up and down with a cutter.
Oh, yeah, right. Of course.
Have to telescope. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, of course, that doesn't help.
Actually, I didn't even think of that. So I've made that hose at the bottom. So I'm probably going to have to add some more. Because I did think about what you said. So at the bottom, the elbow is PVC. So yeah, basically the gravity is going to drop it down the hose, and then at the first curve, it's PVC. So it should sort of run a bit smoother. But yeah.
Oh, that's cool. It's a cool idea. I like it being all one thing.
Yeah, so it's on wheels, so you can just sort of push it around, and so I can store it away. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. I didn't realize how much mess a thicknesser makes. So because when I bought this thing, I just put something through it, and it was just the whole shop was just dust.
Yeah.
So I'm quite glad to be having some kind of to tame it. But other than that, on that end, I've got a breadboard going. That's a Christmas present for someone. That's just a small project. And then I don't know if you can see the Christmas lights behind me.
Yep.
Being December, I thought I'd put those up for the podcast. So yeah.
Hey, your fruit bowl.
Yeah.
Turned out pretty cool. And I'll give you my feedback now that I've seen it. I think I would have done what you did. Just put some feet on it and made a fruit bowl thing, and then and it wouldn't be till afterwards the same, and I would have stepped back and gone, oh, you know what, doesn't quite look right. And after thinking about it for a couple of days, I reckon what I would have done is got like a block of wood as a base, a plinth, and just put a piece of perspex somehow right in the middle of the piece of bark, so it's kind of like set on a bit of an angle, just like a sculpture.
Oh,
and it's just kind of floating, and you could block one end of it, and the fruit would just kind of roll down to one end, and then it would, if it's empty, it just looks like a sculpture, and if it's full of fruit. But but yeah, that I wouldn't have come up with that idea if I hadn't seen the first go, because I would have done probably the same thing. So yeah, it's interesting how your perception changes after you actually see something finished.
And that's why I said in the video, it was, I don't want to use the word frustrating, because I guess it's the process, but that's what I saw in my head. I wanted the big chunky legs on the side being very square and angular as you've got the natural piece in the middle, which is suspended by the highly milled timber. So that was my idea. But yeah, I don't know. It was just...
I really liked it, how it turned out, but the thing I would envision, which would complement it quite nice, is little brass feet.
Oh, yeah.
Like raised up. Just a little bit of extra detail to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a few people said that. Yeah, it needed feet, not just the flat. Things.
But I quite liked it.
Well, it's held up. I've left it outside for about a week now, and I'm just waiting for that bark just to crack like that.
I don't think it will, eh?
But the idea with the dowels is hopefully it shouldn't. It's going to keep it together. So we'll see. Anyway, my fruit bowl is not the most interesting thing we're going to be talking about tonight.
That's it. That's the show. Thanks for watching.
So just to introduce what we're going to talk about, we had a whole plan that we were going to talk about tonight. We might still get to that plan, but Jordan was a bit of a rock star last night and decided he wants to steal the show and talk about something. So a few guys might have seen on Instagram. Jordan, can you give us a rundown of what happened to you yesterday in the shop?
Well, I'm sporting a nice little injury on my left hand, and basically, what happened is I was jointing the piece of wood on my death jointer. I mean, it was just operating as a standard jointer. I didn't have the twin cutters going, but I just somehow, I don't know what happened, my hand fell off the piece of wood and fell straight into the cutter. So essentially, what's happened is from my knuckle down to the fingertip, it's cut on a very steep shear angle. So the fingernail is entirely removed. The bone was about 3/4 down to the knuckle, so that's sitting somewhere inside of my dustbin.
I was going to
So
say
the bone as well.
Oh, the bone's
Holy
gone. Yeah.
crap! I thought it would have
And
stopped. Yes.
yeah, and basically, when it happened, I knew what had happened. I felt the weirdest sensation, but I didn't really want to know what it was. So I looked down and I saw bone.
Oh,
I just knew I had to go. So I
Oh
wrapped it in some gauze. Luckily I have first aid kits everywhere because I am afraid of this sort of thing. Wrapped it in some gauze. I rang my girlfriend and said, I need you to come and get me to the emergency room. And before I could tell her what had happened, she had hung up and she was on her way. So she took me. But yeah, so bit of an accident.
So can you go back to?
Yeah, I need more details in this. I want to know. Yeah.
Can you maybe describe what the size of the board was, and then what you
And
were doing?
how you were pushing it? Yeah.
Yeah, and I would actually ask that you guys ask questions because I'm not sure how to talk about it really. But yeah, so the size of the board was about 120 mil wide.
Yeah.
It was running on edge. So, my thumb's on top of the board and my fingers kind of just lightly pressing it into the fence. And it was
so it wasn't flat down. It was up.
No, it wasn't flat. It was on the edge. And
How
like
thick,
I
like
said,
20 or 50?
Sorry?
How thick was the piece of wood? Like 20 mil, 50 mil?
I think it was 30, 35. So not
right.
super thick.
Yeah. Yep.
And it was probably about halfway through the cut, like half of the length over. So it was like the board was well established.
Is it your leading hand?
Leading hand, yeah.
If that slipped off, so your thumb slipped off the top edge of the board.
Yeah, but the thing is,
stabbed the blades.
The thing is, I think my hand dropped. Like I just think I let go and dropped it down because the lesson I've learned here is the importance of not working tired. So something that you guys don't know, and I'm happy to bring up here, and I'm not using it as an excuse because it's a lesson, but for the last 3 or 4 months, I've been in and out of hospitals, getting biopsies, getting tests done for kidney disease. And, that's obviously taken a toll on me. I've been really tired. The kidneys obviously affect your adrenal glands as well.
Yep.
And what I've been doing is pushing through this just utter exhaustion because I thought it's what I had to do. And what I've learned is if you're tired and exhausted, don't push through. Go and take some time and refresh yourself. I mean, it's not an excuse because it was stupid. I did it, but it's the best explanation I can have is working tired, working distracted.
Couple of other questions then, which I'm sure someone's probably screaming at. So did you have so how wide is your jointer?
It's a 16-inch jointer with a swinging guard.
Yeah. So were you at the back or the front? Like was the fence
the
at the
fence
back?
was set probably 8 inches of cutter exposed.
Yeah.
And then the board. So the fence was about halfway on.
And I guess so if you're halfway through the board, the swinging, what do they call it? Like a lamb chop guard or something.
Yeah.
So most of the blade is well,
I
guess I don't know. On my one, the blade it isn't really exposed if you're cutting it that kind of.
I think a big thing with mine, and this is just I don't know because I can't really recall. It's all a blur.
Yeah.
But there's a sticky spot in the spring.
Right.
So if you get if it gets to this one point, it kind of sticks open.
Right.
It's fine if you go past it, will close, but if you don't get it past that one point, it kind of sticks open a little bit.
Huh.
And I'm guessing anyway that that's where it fell. It was into the blade. Or the other thing is when my hand fell, I actually pushed the cutter forward because I've got this impact injury on my index finger.
Right.
Like the tip is injured,
Huh.
and we don't really know why. Because there's no cuts, there's there's only bruising. So whether it's only a 2-knife cutter head, so it may have hit the non-cutting section of the whatever you call it, cutter block.
Mm.
But
yeah, that's why I'm wondering if it went straight through and hit the block, and you got like hammered on the end of your finger.
Because it was the top that hit.
Yeah.
Like not the fingertip, but
I was also just thinking maybe the way your hand drops, sometimes with those lamb chop guards, there's a little triangle of blade exposed because of the shape of the guard and the shape of your timber.
yeah,
And I guess it could be possible that that finger
just got
went
through that.
just through that triangle, and the other finger's kind of smushed up onto the guard. But
that's what I thought. The impact what you were going to say is that the board either the board coming back or that guard squeezing it into the fence. That would have,
Yeah, I mean that actually could be it. Is that if this finger hit, it pushed it back and just slammed it into the
the guard did what it's supposed to do and stop
yeah.
kickback, and unfortunately it was. Now, when I'm edge jointing, I sort of ride my hand along the fence, and my thumbs are what are pushing into the fence. So that's it. So do you sort of have your entire hand pushing up against the fence?
No. So if the board is shorter than the fence, I would be doing just like you are. So my thumbs are up on top of the fence.
Course. Yeah, 120 mil. Yeah.
But because this is that weird fence that I have with the cutter, it's actually pretty low. So it's probably only 100 mil high, if that. It's probably 80 mil high actually. So the fence itself is not super duper.
And is there where the cutter is the secondary cutter on your jointer?
Yeah.
There obviously is a void in the fence.
Yeah.
Do you think it has anything to do with the way you're pushing work through?
It does, because the obvious. So it's basically another jointer just on its side. So you got the in-feed and the out-feed, and the in-feed side of the fence is set slightly behind the out-feed.
Yeah, of course.
So if I'm using the jointer as a traditional jointer like I was in that case, I've only got 3 inches, not even, probably 50 mil, of the second fence, so the out-feed fence, to press up on to establish the cut. So the first little bit we're going through,
so
really at the front edge of the board, which
you really kind of only want to be using it as a double. Just
you really
do.
Sake. Yeah. So a little introduction to what I was doing, I guess, is in order, which is for this countertop I mentioned earlier. The client rang me saying that the wall, which isn't a wall, may I say, it's a podium, it's a stud, isn't as deep as he thought it was, and I need an infill, and delivery was today.
Right. So
I'm like, a few swear words going through my head because I'm ready to just call this project done and another thing gets added. And I'm jointing this board. I joint one edge and I go to glue it up and I see there's a nail hole on that edge. So I joint the other side of the board just so I can get this glue up done and get back to working on what I was. And it was that second round of jointing that same board which I did it on. So also a bit rushed, I guess.
So we got a question from Colin in the chat. He wants to know how long, like what did the doc say? How long are you going to be out?
Well, here's the thing. I haven't actually spoken to the surgeon after my operation, so I got into plastics really late. So I haven't had. They obviously had gone by the time I was out of my like woken up. But I find out on the 13th exactly. But I think from what the nurses were saying, there should be 4 weeks before I'm kind of out of the wrap. But there might be some therapy. I don't know how bad the nerve damage is. There is nerve damage because it comes all the way down to my elbow. So we don't know how bad that's going to be just yet. So it's a bit unknown at this stage. It's not been long enough to find out.
Because also you have removed, quite, a third of the tip of your finger.
Yeah.
So I guess they will have to close it up like an amputation.
Yeah. So before I went under, the surgeon came out and got consent and talked to me about what he has to do. And at this stage, because I was a rush-in, he had only seen X-rays, not inspected the finger. So he said, best case scenario, we'll have to grind back the small amount of bone that's left from the top part of my finger, and we'll be able to wrap the skin around and bring it on. But what was more likely is that he'll basically amputate to the knuckle,
right,
and bring the skin over, because if the skin that was there was intact, he should be fine. But he didn't know. And
you don't know what's there.
And this is what I'm calling my Christmas present. Yeah. I find out. I want to know what's in there, but I find out on the 13th.
Oh man.
Oh, man. It was funny. So I was talking about that bin earlier being a bit heavier than I'd anticipated. I had it up on my wheelie bin today to try and unload some of the stuff, and as I sort of put it down, not really realizing that my finger was right underneath it on this tiny lip, and I just crushed the crap out of my finger. It's gone black now. Oh, blah, blah, swearing, blah, blah. And the first thing that came into my mind was your finger, George, because it's the middle as well. And I kind of went, well, it's not that bad. I should probably be a little bit cooler about all of this, because it's just my nail's a bit sore. That's it.
Yeah. Well, I feel pretty stupid. I'm not exactly proud.
Well, yeah, these things are never fun.
No.
So, right.
Sorry. I just have one more question, and this is I love. Well, not I love asking this, but I'm always very curious to ask this to people who have these sort of horrific injuries. Was it painful in the moment, or is it pain not on your mind in that moment?
Okay, so painful is no, because it felt more like an impact. It felt like I was hit really hard and really fast, and it didn't have time to kind of register as pain. But when I finally took the courage to look down, then it was painful. It wasn't until I looked at it, and obviously my brain registered what had happened. It was bad, and I wrapped it up. I ran out the front of the shop and got my neighbor, because I don't do blood. Blood and me don't mix.
Yeah.
And he was more concerned than I was, I think. But just pacing back and forth until my lift got there, just trying to ignore it, because it was painful, but I was also in shock. So the pain was a different sort of pain.
Sort of at the back, yeah.
Yeah, so this evening, just before when I emailed you guys, I emailed saying, I'm not sure how I'm going to go because the anesthetic's just wearing off. That pain, I've never felt anything like it.
Yeah,
that's what I was going to ask. Is it the most painful thing you've ever experienced?
It is. I was pretty confident that I was prepared for it, because I've crushed ankles and I've had a whole heap of other things done. But this pain it's weird, and I think there's also
pain, huh?
Yeah, I can't even explain it, but I've got these pain meds, oxycodone, and it was 40 minutes of me just in a state waiting for this to kick in, and now I'm finally feeling like there's a throb there, but the pain.
Just keep on top of that. I hate when you let it lapse.
I've got reminders in my phone for the first 2 days. I am not going without it, and then we'll see how we go with just Panadol.
Does the workshop still need cleaned up?
Yeah. What does the jointer look like?
Well, I popped in there this morning to get the countertop. Luckily, I managed to convince my dad, of all people, to take the day off work and help me out. And I had a quick look around, and he went in last night because I just pulled the door behind me. Everything was still on, music was blaring, and he did a bit of a clean up for me.
Right. Oh,
I do have a fair bit of blood in the kitchen because that was my closest first aid.
So we've got a question, and I think this is a pretty relevant question here from Colin. Do you have workers' insurance while you're off?
Being self-employed, there's a really weird zone where workers' comp is what this injury would be considered as, but because I'm self-employed and it's my business, most insurers have a hard time, which I should have got if I had this injury.
Yeah,
that would have been protecting me, but I don't. And all I'm going to say is I'm really lucky that it's the end of the year. This was my last project that needed happening. Everything else can be put off. So, yeah, really fortunate. And Adrian has a question saying, so are you keeping the jointer or is it for sale? It's actually really funny because on Gumtree at the moment, there's the similar size. I think it's slightly smaller. I think it's 15-inch, not 16-inch jointer, which I saw, and it's a really good one. It's a modern, it's parallelogram. It's not like what I've got there. And it's got a better fence and stuff. But, and I emailed him just out of interest saying, look, I know it's low bowling, but I have this secret figure of $700 that I never pass up a good machine on. I don't expect you to say yes, but the offer's there. And it was after that I realized, you know what, I've got a jointer that's that size. It works really well. Yeah, it needs a bit of a tune up every couple of weeks, but stuff it.
Yeah.
And that was the morning or maybe the night before I did this that I thought of it. Am I keeping it still? Yeah, I'm not changing jointers, but what I am doing is I'm gonna invest that $700, which that would have been, into safety equipment that I don't have, which will help me stop doing stupid things like positioning my body in weird ways for doing tasks that really need two people. So, get a heap of feather boards and rollers, hopefully find a power feeder so I can actually put that on that machine because it's got the post there. It just hasn't got the unit, and do that. I mean, it's an eye-opener because I am working there myself, and if I'm not there, it's too hard.
A slightly oddball question, but I'm just thinking about it. I think I would have a problem. So my first aid kit, I have one. It's displayed but it's in a cupboard.
Right.
And I would need to open the door, pull out and it's an overhead hinged unit because I had some hinges from a job. So open the lid up, pull out the thing, open the plastic container, get out my whatever I need. Did you have a similar issue when you were like, okay, I've got first aid kits, but actually not super easy to get at?
My issue, which is lucky that I raided my first aid kit for gloves the day before because I ran out of my actual nitroglycerin gloves. So it was still open, but my issue, if I did have one, was getting the zip open on my first aid kits because they're a zipped bag.
Right.
And I was obviously one-handed and operating a zip.
Well, that's why I was also just thinking, okay, even if I get into my first aid kit, it's like a fishing tackle box.
Yeah.
Which I actually put my own one together because I don't like those bags. But even then, you get to the gauze and it's wrapped in a little bag. And when you're by yourself, you got to tear it open or something. You get blood all over your face or whatever at the same time. So just that alone, it seems like there should be a better way for like a trauma kit where you can just reach into something and grab some.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
I keep saying it, I'm incredibly lucky that this is how it worked. And I'm even incredibly lucky in the circumstances that I had it still open and stuff. Otherwise, it would have been a lot harder.
Yeah, that's crazy.
How much were you taking off the board at a time? Well, in that.
I don't really ever adjust how much I'm removing, so I'd hazard a guess that it's about 1.5 mil max.
Okay, so do you finish on the? I mean, would you consider it a finished part on the jointer?
It depends how well the knives are set, because it's only a 2-knife cutter head.
Okay, yeah.
It's a bit less quality than a 3 cutter. But yeah, I mean, I've got it tuned pretty damn well that I'm happy to use that as a glue joint.
Just out of interest, so I've got a 4 cutter straight knife jointer.
Yeah.
But it seems to run fairly slowly, and so you get the
the wave to it.
You get the waves in it, and so I find that I've got to go particularly slowly to get a nice smooth joint, which is fine. But it just is, I'm standing there for twice as long as I think I should be. So do you think your plane is with the 2-blade is running fast?
I know that it runs at 6,100 RPM because I had a tack on it because I'm looking at getting a helical cutter head for it, and that's the speed they require is 6,000.
Okay. Yeah, mine's not that fast at all, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So I might have to gear mine up, I think.
But yeah, I mean, as the other thing, just to go back to my setting that Rob asked of 1.5 mil, mine being such an old jointer, the actual beds don't close in as tight as they could to the cutter head.
Right.
So there's actually quite a big pinch area in there. It's not as bad as the old square cutters, obviously. Remove your entire arm.
Yeah.
But because of it just being so old, I don't think they really had the casting down as good as it could have been or whatever. So there's probably, I'd say, a 5 mil pinch gap in there.
Oh yeah. Yeah, mine's probably 2 mil, I think.
Yeah, so still enough.
Yeah. Oh, that's a big question.
Looking at the first aid question, I still don't have one in the shop. I've just got a fire extinguisher, which is probably not as
important. That will help with
amputation.
amputation.
Yeah, at least if there's a fire, you can get out of the building. But I need to get myself a first aid kit.
Even like I've just got a few of the roadside ones, the roadside trauma kits.
Yeah,
it's got gauze, it's got all the band-aids and washers and gloves and all that, and that's pretty good. I guess the only things that's missing would be the safety scissors for removing clothing, and it's probably could do with tweezers and eye wash station. That would be the only things that I would add to it.
Yeah, eye wash. Yeah, my plan's always been just to put my head under the tap because I can't do that. But it's probably not ideal. Yeah,
I mean, I've only ever had a few things in my eye, and every single time I've had something in my eye, it's while wearing safety glasses.
Yeah, I've had similar things.
Like I had a shard of metal off a grind wheel in my eye, and I was wearing goggles, but it had the little vents in the bottom.
Yeah.
Anti-fog up, and that's where the metal went up and got into my eye.
Yeah, so my ideas coming through here for first aid kits. I like the pull-out drawer that dumps the stuff out underneath it. I guess in that case, you could just have a wide drawer, like a tray that pulls out, and everything's just spread out. So you just need one finger at minimum to hook the drawer open. And everything's just laid out on like a tray. And
well, that's why when you were talking, Joey, about your first aid kits, I could just imagine myself just taking a thing and just throwing it against a wall and just everything comes out because they're in the panic.
I'm always like, I really like having everything in a nice little kit, and I've got one of everything I need, and it's all tidy. But actually getting into it when you're bloodied and sore is probably never going to happen.
Yeah.
So. Okay.
Well, it's very, very, very happy that you're all good, George. Man, and I'm really happy that you were keen to talk about it because I think we all need to keep hearing this from time to time. I think before a lot of the guys in the chat got on. Before we started, I was just saying to George how when I first got my jointer, it was secondhand. I'd never used the joints before, so there was no real warning. And I just got on and started pushing stuff through until someone said to me, aren't you going to use a push block or something? And it had just never dawned on me that a jointer could be a dangerous thing. And you could, I guess you could get into real trouble like that. I mean, I know there's a lot of people who say you don't need a push block, but for someone who's never used it before, no one's ever shown me how to use it. All I've got is YouTube.
Yeah.
That's how you get into trouble.
I'm quite afraid of releasing my video this week because it shows me using the jointer with no push blocks.
Right.
Which is before this injury. This was like a fortnight ago that I recorded it.
So my jointer came with a couple of push blocks, and I was like, sweet.
Orange things?
Yeah, I was like, sweet, I'll try these. They were more dangerous than I've ever, and they're straight in the bin. If I'm using large stock, I won't use a block. As soon as I get down, if I'm trying to plane anything kind of 30 mil and under on its flat, I use my plywood push stick. And then my hand's kind of 200 mil away from the.
I think I'll continue to use my hands more than I would use blocks on the jointer because it feels more controlled. It feels safer to me, but I'll be more cautious about the thin stuff, like you say.
Well, that's what the argument is that, people reach for their push block unnecessarily and you lose so much control. It was just this week that I was reading an article. Someone had taken a photo of it out of a magazine about a jointer, and it's a picture of a guy with gloves pushing, and then he's hitting the glove thing as well, which I don't know enough about, but I've heard that that's also. And in the article, he was saying, I've been using a jointer for 20 years. I have never had a board kick back on me. So why is there this big fear about it?
Personally, I don't know. The only time I've had a kickback was if I've dragged a longboard backwards and it's caught the blade and it kind of shoots back a little bit, but I'm holding it. It's up off the table, so it's not really an issue. One time I would say where you can't use a push block on a jointer is if you have rough stock that you've jointed the flat face and you go to joint the edge and the edge is way off square. And so you actually have to physically, with your hands, hold it against the fence to keep it square for the first few passes while you're getting that thin edge sitting flat, and then it can sit on its own devices. Otherwise, it's going to, if you just let it sit, it's just going to tilt away from the fence, and you'll get a nice crazy angle on the side of your board. So,
I guess what you could do in that case is bring out the hand plane and get it closer. But then we start talking about, you could go through it forever.
I think for me and Joey, we'll just go to the panel saw to do it like that. It's the safest and easiest way.
Since I've got that panel saw, I've only run my jointer today for the first time since I bought the panel saw.
I'm the same. The only reason I was jointing an edge on the jointer was because where I have the countertop assembled was blocking my sliding table, so I couldn't use it. So,
there's a couple of questions on the chat, so we could maybe just get into that because it seems like an interesting thing to talk about. From Leroy, what is a project or technique that will really stretch your current skill sets? Go, Robin.
A project that will test my current skill sets. So there's one, and George, you've done this in a video before. I want to do a coffee table, but with a sort of angled loose tenon join. And I can't remember, it was a while ago you did a low slung coffee table, and I keep meaning to go back and have a look at it, but you've done the join at 90 degrees and then cut away the material to create, because I don't have the, a good amount of tools to do that angled loose tenon, but you created that join 90 degrees and then cut away to create the angle.
Are you talking the curved? So I cut it and then I cut the curved profile?
I'm pretty sure it was an angle.
A different project I'm thinking of.
Pretty sure it's angle. Well, anyway, that's a project that I've got the top and I want to get going on it, but it's about creating that sort of just a square frame and then 4 angled legs coming out, like that. I've never done an angled. I guess the other way you could do it is with where the mortise and tenon. No, a bridle joint. Sorry, where you create the angled bridle joint. I've never done that before. That's going to be that's sort of a skill that I don't have yet.
The thing I'll tell you is it's more daunting than it actually is to think about it. It's actually not as difficult as it looks. So
right, okay.
Definitely attempt it on test scrap, but it's not as bad as you think. Because I remember doing that sort of stuff for the first time. Thinking, oh, this is going to be hard. And it goes together, and you think, oh, it's actually not that bad.
Yeah. Well, as you say, it's just about doing it, and it's not something difficult. I mean, you guys have probably done it a million times before, but it's about that, that first step to just give it a go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd say that's mine. Joey, I'll pass it back.
Okay, hang on, just let me do one last letter. Bam. Okay, so I've been designing. So this weekend coming, I'm moving into the new house finally. So yay for me, I'll be moving furniture while I'm meant to be building it at the same time. I've been designing, since we started building the house, I've been designing my dining table and chairs, and came up with a really great idea, and we were like, yes, that's the one. And then that changed, and we changed the design, and we said, right, yep, that's the one. And then that changed, and now we finally have a design which I'm going to make, and that is going to push me. So should I talk about it? Why not? It is a hexagon tabletop, and it's going to be veneered to look like a Louis cube, so that looks like a 3-dimensional cube on the top. So one really large 3-dimensional cube sitting on a veneered hexagonal pedestal that then goes down into a large hexagonal base as well to hold everything. So there's 3 elements, and they've all got crazy angles and joinery, which is all completely hidden, but it has to be super strong and also removable, because the top is 1500 across, so it needs to come off the base. So I'm dealing with issues about what do I make the top from, what substrate, how am I actually going to join the substrates while lining up veneers, because the only way I can see it at the moment is to glue up the table top upside down so I can screw my bits of plywood together, because I'm going to have to use plywood as the substrate. But then do I veneer it afterwards? I don't know how I will press that. So if I press the veneers onto my 3 pieces of like cube first, then I've got to try and line that up perfectly upside down when I can't see it, when I'm screwing my 2 bits of ply together. Sounds very complicated, and it is. So yeah, very complicated for me. I'm not sure that I think it is pushing my skill set. I've done all the elements of it before, but not in one job, I think. So yeah.
Now, with these types of complicated builds like this, do you plan it all out and then get stuck into it? Because obviously this is, as you're saying, it's a fairly complicated one. Whereas if it was simple, you might just sort of gung-ho and off you go. But with this, do you plan out every single step and then get into it? Or do you do 50% or 25%? Or?
I do. I'll say what I do on every job is I plan out what I need, what I'm going to make, and then I only think about the crucial elements, because the rest then just falls into place. So if it's something with angled joinery, I'm going to focus on the angled joinery, and then after that, everything's relative to that angled joinery, and I would have learnt the angles I need to cut and all that kind of stuff. So in this case, I know how to make it. I think the problem is, what order do I make it in? And if I follow a given order of operations, is that going to run me into trouble on the next step, say lining up veneers or trying to press veneers and stuff like that? So yeah, I'm still undecided how that's going to work. I have sketched it up on SketchUp, Ian. I could make a scale model. I've got enough offcuts of veneer too, that would be an interesting thing, but I think it would take just as long as a full-size one. So, yeah.
Just another question, George, for you, and we will get back to the chat in a second, but I've just thought of something.
Yeah.
With the jointer, are you nervous about going back to it? The reason I ask is I had a bit of a scare once with an angle grinder cutting through some steel, and the one of those zip discs, it actually broke, and the thing just took off.
Right.
And luckily I was paying attention and doing all the right things, so I wasn't in the way of
Avoided disaster. Yeah.
Yeah. But it took me a long time to be okay with it. I'll cut a paver in half. I'll cut a paver into a sculpture, no problem. But as soon as I got to cut metal now, I'm terrified. So are you a bit nervous?
I obviously I haven't gone back, so I don't know until I approach it.
Yeah.
But I don't think I'll be nervous about it. I just think I'll be really cautious. I think I'll be more aware of it than I have been before.
Probably
I think
a bit slower.
Yeah, and I think because all I can kind of say is that, get back on the horse that kicked you off. But I think I'll be okay because I do use it every day. I'm really, really comfortable around it. And but yeah, I'll get back to you as soon as I'm back in the shop though, because I don't know. It could be really bad. Trauma is a weird thing, so.
So Jordan, what do you reckon to push your skill set at the moment?
One thing I've never really done, and I would love to, is veneering.
Right.
Veneering to me is this really fine art, in my mind anyway, and I know people that do it every day say it's not that bad. But yeah, if I could get some veneering really down and looking the way I would want it to, I think that would be an amazing skill for me to learn.
Well, just on that then, I remember about it. There's a guy on Instagram, CT Fine Furniture. His name's Craig Thibodeau, I think it is. He is a master of veneering, and you need to check out his Instagram just to see what he can do.
What he can do.
I talked to him a little bit about veneering, so I got some tips off him. But he said he's actually just about to finish a book on how to veneer. So everyone should be buying that. Just the knowledge this guy's got, I can't wait to see what he's put into a book. So that'll be really interesting.
I'll have to check him out. I mean, there's, on top of veneering, everything I can keep pushing my skills in. I mean, I'm constantly looking for new methods and things, so hard to pinpoint it.
Cool. Let's see what else we got.
There's an interesting question from Ross, which I can quickly answer because I've had both.
Yes. I was just about to say, yeah.
Ross is saying, I'm in the process of building a shed workshop and I'm looking at buying a combo jointer planer. What's your thoughts on combo versus separate machines? So I have had both. And my answer to you would be it depends on your space, because it's more efficient as far as workflow to have them separate. You don't have machine changeover. You can leave them set up and not worry about changing the bed height. But if you're pushed for space, they're brilliant. The combo machines do everything that a standalone will do, and often more. So if you get something like the Minimax like I had, you can attach a mortising table onto that, and now you've got yourself a real good joinery machine. Another argument is that for the same price, you can get a 300mm wide jointer planer combination, but if you're looking at a 300mm wide just a jointer, you're looking at $4,000 minimum. So you're getting a larger capacity machine for actually a bit of a money saving. Because ideally, you want your jointer to match the width of your thicknesser. Ideally.
It doesn't happen very often.
It doesn't happen often because the wide jointers are so expensive.
I've never heard of that, but I guess, it makes sense.
I mean, it means you can flatten and straighten a 15-inch wide board on a jointer and then send it through your 15-inch wide thicknesser. So, My answer would be it depends on your space, but for workflow, it's better to have them separate. But it's not the end of the world. It just adds a few units. And if you're doing it as a hobby, time isn't really that much of an issue for most people. It's just when you're, on deadlines.
Yeah. If you're doing like a lot of doors, like you've got a whole stack of rails and stiles, you want to have one machine set up and the other one set up and have everything. And then having to swap the thicknesser back over to the jointers would be annoying, but just slower, really, I suppose. And like you say, it's got to be based on space.
If you have the room, go separate. But
I see Cuffy's championing the idea as well, saying the combo machine is today I was working with my thicknesser and my planer, and I do the one board, put it through the thicknesser. Okay, that's about right. Well, but I should have done this back to the joints. So my workflow is just, because I'm not a professional yet, it's all over the place. So for me, it's super, because if I was having to flip the thing over and over, like, it would just be a nightmare.
You will quickly learn to do it all when you need to do it.
Yeah, well, that gets into the topic we were meant to be talking about, is learning lessons about stuff. You learn pretty quick that when you've got a machine set up, you need to do everything you can think of with that machine set up as it is. As soon as it's shifted, you're never going to get it again.
Yeah. All right. Let's just do one more question, and then we'll call it a night. I'm just having a look for one.
There was one.
Saw one earlier.
Practice joints. There was one about
the practice joints. That was the one that I wanted to ask you guys. Do you still do that? Because you guys are obviously at a level now where you're pretty sure of what you're doing. Do you still
like to say that I practice my joints on the real deal, because I've never. I think maybe I've cut less than 5 practice joints in my life, and they're all terrible because I've got no consequence.
Yeah, you're not really invested in it.
No, but so when I was doing, say, a little while ago, I did a big maple chest of drawers, and all the case was dovetailed. I mean, there's no practice, there's no warm up. It's just mark it out, think through it, and make it right. Like, make it work. So if you make a mistake, you've got to learn to fix that mistake. And if you've got a dire consequence, i.e. starting from scratch, you're probably not going to make a mistake. You really take your time, and then as you get more confident with the joinery, you can smash things out a bit faster. But
I agree with you completely. I think it was John Haas says the same thing. There's no, he just doesn't see the point as well. He's been doing it for decades. I don't think I've ever done a test cut. I have messed up cuts and wished I'd done test cuts, but ultimately, unless you have all your machine, and this is just my opinion, of course, if you have all your machines dialed in, then it makes no sense to be doing test cuts, and you might as well ease up to those cuts anyway. So I can't see the need for it personally.
I do every now and again, but usually it's more about getting the angle just right. So if it's a design I'm not really have out on paper, I will often cut on a scrap bit of pine and think that it needs to be, let's say for a leg splay or something, I think it needs to be 5 degrees. I'll cut that in pine, and then I'll have a look at it in real space and think, actually, I'm going to drop that down. But I very rarely would do it with something that's, mortise and tenon or a dovetail or something. The only time I always am doing it at the moment is I've got a new machine, which is the slot mortiser,
right? And
I'm just getting used to that. So until I'm feeling comfortable on that machine, I will continue to do test cuts and test fit-ups. But once I have that confidence in the machine and my setup, I won't be doing it.
Someone just commented mentioning Dorian's channel, which I mentioned, I think, last week or the week before, Dorian Bracht, who does a lot of Japanese joinery in his videos. And absolutely, if I was going to attempt one of those joints for a job, I would have to run through it. Not so much to to practice the cutting, but to get my head around the geometry of what I'm actually cutting. Some of those joints are so complicated that you really need to actually make one to understand what is happening with 2 or 3 pieces of timber. I think most people can visualize a dovetail in their head, and so you don't necessarily have to practice it to understand the geometry.
Yeah. It's pretty self-explanatory once.
Yeah, but when you start getting hidden things happening behind other things, and it really, you need to actually just smash it out and see what piece of wood goes where. So, yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, let's leave it there for tonight. Before everyone runs off, are we going to talk about what we're watching? Do you guys have anything interesting?
I'm not prepared for this one today. I've been thrown out.
That's all right.
Have I got... I can look at my history, though. I'm sure there's something.
Well, while you're doing that, I saw a video by the guy by his channel's name. I don't know if it's his actual name, but it's Olari. He made a... he's quite well known in the US, well, in that whole maker community over there. He made a knife out of a piece of stone. So with the grinder, he cut out the shape of a knife, brought it up to an edge.
Oh yeah, I did see that. Yeah.
He said it wasn't sharp enough to cut really well, but it was pretty sharp, and it was just out of one block of stone. And I thought it was just such a cool idea with an angle grinder. Just it was a really cool idea.
I will say I haven't had bugger all time to watch anything this week, but I will go back and say go and check out Craig Thibodeau on Instagram. CT Fine Furniture is the handle, I believe. Go give him a subscribe. He's got plenty of subscribers, but man, just take one squiz over what he can do and you'll be hooked. It's crazy.
Yeah. Thibodeau, it's a very interesting thing.
I think I'm going to let the team down this week because everyone I've been watching is not actually woodworking.
Well.
This old Tony, though.
This old Tony.
Yeah, I kind of find I watch a lot of the time watching the woodworking as sort of work, but then I'll watch other stuff. I enjoy Let's Plays, so I'll watch Let's Play. That's like my time off. That's my entertainment. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
I've just had no time. I'm sorry.
That's good. Sweet.
Cool. All right, everyone. Well, thanks to everyone in the chat. It was good to have a lot of the questions and feedback as we go. Obviously, keep it coming. This is an interactive show, so it was the questions that we didn't get to tonight, we will do again next week. Jord, hope you make it through the next couple of days, and that the pain doesn't come back too much. Keep an eye on those meds.
Yeah, thank you. It's pretty rough, but we'll be good. We'll be back to the standard sort of episode next week.
Yeah.
Sweet.
All right, so thanks again, everyone. We'll see you next Thursday, same time, same place. Have a very good weekend, and thanks for watching.
Cheers, guys.
Yep.